We'll just make sure we've got everyone muted as well. Yeah, so as we go through, if you've got any questions, feel free to jump on mic if you want to, and yeah, can answer any questions as we go. So yeah, thanks everyone for coming in. So I'm Aidan Ainsley, Facility and Investment Lead at Kent FA, and I'm just going to be talking to you today about the grass pitch funding, which has been made available to education establishments as of April this year. So hopefully it's going to be some welcome news for you all. So in terms of what we're trying to do, so the Football Foundation's been working with the FA and the Grounds Management Association on trying to revolutionise the grass pitches across the country, and has the aim of reaching 20,000 good pitches by 2030. So here in Kent, we're targeting 356 good quality pitches by the end of June 2024. So in terms of the grass pitch programme, this is basically two-pronged. So it involves guidance on how to improve pitches, and also the funding in which to spend on works to get the pitches improved. So what do we mean by good pitches? So the Grounds Management Association have a bit of a framework which rates the pitches from basic right the way through to elite. There is actually a level below basic, which is poor, but it's missing from this graph because essentially it's below the standard in which we really want any pitches to be, but really we're aiming for them all to reach at least a good level. We do have obviously high and elite on the graph there. For the purposes of this programme and the level of funding and investment that is going into these pitches, we're not expecting to see any that reach a high or elite level because the volume of work and investment and human resource that can go into the pitches is not likely to return that sort of result. So for the purposes of as we go through, we won't have the high and elite section included. So what do we mean by good pitches? So from a science point of view, this is the technical specifications of what a good pitch is. So you can see in the yellow column there some of the measurements. I'm not expecting you all to understand the ins and outs of it all, but basically that's how the GMA kind of categorise whether a pitch is poor, basic, good or advanced. So the PitchPower app, which you may have heard a little bit about, and I'll mention as we go through, will ask you to take some of these measurements at the front end before a report is produced to tell you how you can move your pitch from one section up to the next one. But that's just some of the background information that might or might not be of interest. So this is just a quick insight into the impacts that the pitches can have if the programme's followed diligently. I think, just going to double check, hang on a second, share that again, because I've missed computer sound, there we go. Okay.
Prior to the pilot starting, we used to have quite a lot of matches postponed, mainly down to waterlogged pitches. Since the pilot, we've only had one weekend where we haven't managed to play football. And yet other pitches on the Wirral have been closed by the council because they are completely underwater and not playable. And it's clear to see that aeration has allowed the pitches to really come on. The grass quality is greatly improved. The surface is improved. We invited parents, managers and players to feedback after every game, and all the comments say what a better service that we've managed to produce here compared to what we had prior. It's made us realise now that by doing this work, the improvements that we've seen are well worth the time and effort that's been put in to help us achieve that.
So hopefully you can see just what a key benefit it can be in terms of following the guidance in the report, and hopefully we can get some really good pitches in across your site. So just now to touch on PitchPower, which is effectively the start of the process. So PitchPower is the Football Foundation's web app that allows users to self-assess their pitches. First thing to kind of make you clear on is it can't be found on the App Store. So if you've got an iPhone or Android, you won't be able to find it there. You need to visit pitchpower.org.uk to access it. You can access it on your phone or on a laptop. The first time that you visit it on a phone, it'll ask you if you want to add PitchPower to your home screen. If you say yes, then it will behave like an app and it'll sit there, and you can just click into it nice and easy without having to go to your web browser in order to access it. So essentially, as was mentioned, you can self-assess your pitches. It'll ask you a series of questions and ask you to upload some information, which then goes through to the Grounds Management Association, who'll use the criteria and send back a report, which will basically tell you what level the pitch is currently at and what works you need to do to move it up to a good level. So first stage of PitchPower is to create an account. So as I mentioned before, pitchpower.org.uk, you can then add yourself to your organisation. You can add your grounds to that organisation and then add your pitches onto your ground. So I'll just quickly give you a short run through so you can see how it looks. So when you log in, you'll have a dashboard on one side. Hopefully it's going to work properly for me. I might have to log back in. Bear with me. There we go. So I'm just going to find our demo organisation, which is a bit further down. There we go. So ordinarily you would join your organisation on the left here. You can type in the name of your school or university or academy, and it should already be listed on there. If not, you can add a new organisation. So you'll just need the name of the organisation and the address that it's on. And I think it'll also ask you what type of organisation you are as well. But then you go into your organisation and you can then join your ground. So you'll need to add obviously the ground that you're at, whether it's a school or whatever. Once you're in, you can then open the ground and then you can add a new sport. So for those of you, and I guess being educational sites, there'll be a few. If you've got other sports outside of football, so rugby and cricket specifically, you can now use PitchPower to assess those pitches as well. So when you click on add new sport, you've got a couple of other options there too. And basically you can do an assessment on those pitches and you'll get a report specific to those pitches too and that sport, which will tell you how to get those pitches in the right condition for that sport. In terms of funding for those ones, I'm not sure about the rugby and the cricket funding streams and what's available. But the process of doing the actual assessment and receiving the guidance report will be the same for all of the sports. So once you've done that, you've added football as your sport, you can then add your pitches on. So manage pitches. You can see at the bottom of there, you can add a new pitch. I'm just going to edit this one so you can see how it works, but you need to name the pitch, and it's worth naming it something that makes sense to you so that when the report comes through and it says this is what this pitch is like, you'll know which one it's being referenced to. It's not overmarked, it's not floodlit, it's not shared with any other sports, and we're going to say it's an adult 11v11 pitch, and it's not used in the National League system. And then you can adjust the location of where it is so that it makes sense to you. We've just got ours slap bang next to the M20 on some land where there isn't actually a pitch, but it's just for for you to see, and then save. Back to my pitches, so that's done. And then I can go back to the sport, and now I'm ready to begin my inspection. So you'll notice that there's a yellow tick there, which means that something's outstanding. On here, you can see some other pitches, so that's another site. So that it gives you an indication that there are some pitches there, but it's not pertaining to your organisation. So don't worry too much if you see greyed out pitches. If you need to remove a pitch or you change the configuration, you can do that in the manage pitches section. So you can change and turn them around, or you can change the sizes of them as well, as you need to. Before we get into how the inspection works, I'll just go back to here and tell you about the information that you need to collate in advance. So we call this the ABCDEF pre-assessment actions. So you need to collate these before you go out to do the physical inspection. You don't need to do anything in the app. So this is, you can just open a Word document, or even if you know this information mentally, that'll be fine. But you'll need your budget, so how much you're currently spending on maintenance and renovations for the site. So that's site specific, not pitch specific. Cancellation, so how frequently you're having to cancel games due to waterlogging. Don't include anything like the teams who are meant to play didn't turn up, or referee got caught in traffic, so the game got abandoned before it started. Like, leave all of those things out, just anything that's due to the conditions of the pitch. Drainage, so is there any existing drainage at the site? What type is it, and what year of installation was it? And then equipment, so this is around any maintenance equipment that you use on the site which you own. So if you hire in a contractor, don't include their equipment, just anything that you've got that you use that's your own. And then fixtures, this is just around how many hours match play each pitch tends to get. And this is on a pitch by pitch basis. If there's any separate training hours that happen on it on a week to week basis. And also if there's any recreational use that happens on the pitch. In terms of the time of the season, because I know that during the summer period that might look quite different in terms of who's training or using the pitches for training, but think of it as if it's the main part of the season, so the kind of middle of the winter. Is there any training use? A lot of the time it'll be a no, but I'm sure on some occasions it'll be a yes. Also, just to pick up on the equipment part, make sure you've got the make and the model of the piece of equipment that you have, and the condition and year of purchase. So the reason why that one's an important one is because you can apply for the grass pitch machinery grant. However, in order to be successful with that application, you need a recommendation to appear in your PitchPower report that says you need a piece of equipment replacing. So if you've got, for example, a line marker and it's had its last run out, then if you put in the condition section that it's run down, it's worn out, it needs replacing, you should then get a recommendation that lands in the PitchPower report when it comes through, so that when you apply, and you'll need to reference your PitchPower report ID number, they'll be able to see in your report that actually, yeah, there was a recommendation from the GMA that they need that replacing, so they'll accept your application for that replacement piece of equipment. So once you've done that, you're then ready to head out onto the pitch and start the assessment. So you'll need a spade or a soil sampler. A soil sampler would be better if you've got one, but if not, a spade is fine. A measuring tape, and then your phone with access to PitchPower on it. So in terms of what you're going to need to do, so the app will ask for photos or measurements of the pitch damage, the lines, to see kind of, are they straight, are they burnt in? Obviously shouldn't be burnt in, but are they being burnt in? Are they painted on? Are they visible? grass height, and I should have added in that there'll be a measurement for grass height as well. Wheat grass and weed coverage. So again, they'll want photos, and it says a measurement, but you can see on the right hand side there, that's the question for weed coverage. It will basically want to know a percentage in terms of how much of the picture is covered by weeds. In that particular one, there's 100 squares. You can click on the squares so to pertain every square that contains some weed in it, or you can just put a percentage in the box on the bottom right, which I think is easier to do, particularly when you're doing the grass question, where really there's pretty much grass in every single square there. So you could say 100%, but it isn't 100 because there are clearly some daisies showing some weeds. So yeah, I'd always use the percentage one on that. If you're struggling with how to do any of the measurements, there's a green hint, which you can see there where it says need help measuring. If you click on that, it will then give you a helpful tip. And for some of them, there's also a YouTube short video, which is about 20 seconds long, which just shows you how to do that measurement as well. And that's contained within that same tip too. Okay, so I'll just show you a little bit more. So now that you're in, you can then begin your inspection. So we'll begin inspection. Are your pitches up to date? Yes, we're ready to go. It's a football inspection. Inspection reasons. So to start off with, you'll put interest in a Football Foundation grant. Once you've been awarded the grant, you'll need to do PitchPower assessments twice a season so that they can see how the pitch is progressing and give you an updated report with new advice based on how the pitch is as it kind of progresses. So in that instance, when you're doing your subsequent ones, you can then put existing Football Foundation grant. So you'll need your spades, tape measure and camera phone. So they'll ask some questions around the ground as a whole. So as I mentioned, it's asking about maintenance budget, renovations. Budget split is around if you spend more on a particular pitch than any of the others. For example, if you've got a first team pitch. General ground maintenance, again, is a bit of an overview as to what exactly you do in terms of maintenance activities and who kind of does it. And then the general ground equipment, again, as I mentioned, this is what equipment you've got, what year you have had it, and what's the situation. Oh, it needs replacing. So you'll notice here that there's a yellow bit for anything that's incomplete, and there's a green tick for anything that's done. Once you've finished those three sections, you're then able to go pitch specific. So if we go to the demo 11v11 pitch, so now we've got a section again which is asking around pitch maintenance. Again, it's asking some of the same questions. You can see that it's already got the answer in from the answer we put in from the general ground situation. This is basically asking you if you do anything additional on that pitch that you don't do on any of the others. So this is your opportunity to go, actually, we do a bit of extra top dressing on this one, for example. If you do all the same things across all the pitches, then you can just click next and move through. The general section, so this will ask you about your drainage, whether you've got some installed, the frequency of how your pitch is used for matches and for training, and for you to take any photos of any damage of the pitch and indicate if any major renovations have been done on it recently. And then you'll also take some photos. So it'll ask for a wide-angled photo from the goal line of the pitch, so that they can see what the whole pitch looks like. Confirmation that you've got the right compliant goalposts, and a picture of the line markings. And then finally, you've got three parts of the pitch in which they'll ask you for photos and measurements. So both the goal mouths and the center circle. First part is it will ask for the grass height. So again, as I mentioned before, you've got that helpful tip there. So you can upload a photo. The photo, I'll choose this one because it's easier to see, but the grass coverage, for example, if you click on the hint, as I mentioned there on the right hand side, you've got a little explanation, and then you've also got a YouTube clip that can tell you how to do that measurement if you're stuck as you go. It'll ask about surface debris. So do you have leaves that are constantly on the pitch because the pitch is next to a load of trees that drop during the main part of the season? And then after you go through that section, it'll then ask about the sample of the soil. So you'll take the soil sample out of the ground, be it with the spade or the soil sampler, take a photo of it with the measuring tape next to it, and then the three measurements it'll ask for is the thatch depth, the topsoil depth, and the root depth. And again, they'll have those little hints next to them to tell you kind of what you're looking to see in terms of those measurements as well. And then that's basically it. Once you've then done that for the three parts of the pitch, you can then submit. So each pitch should take about 30 minutes to do in terms of assessing. It will be quicker once you start getting used to doing it. And the other tip that I like to tell people is, especially if it's either raining or your reception's not particularly good, as long as you're sure of which photos you need to take and you've got your measuring tape, it's worth getting out there, getting the photos done, which then would reduce it to about 10 minutes per pitch, and then going back inside and uploading the photos and going through and answering the questions as you go in the nice warm comfort of your office. So just a little tip from me. So once you've done that, you'll then get your PitchPower report come through, and this will detail exactly what needs to happen with your pitch, and yeah, what the current standard of it is. So I'll just show you a one from Simon Langton Girls School, which was done earlier this year. So this will look like, you'll see that it's got the PitchPower ID report number right at the front on the center, so you'll need that when you do the application, and it's also got it at the bottom of every page, just in case you miss it. Okay, so as you can see here, they've got the three pitches. They all came out as poor. It's got the date the inspection was done, when they need to do the next one, who inspected it, and then also who produced a report from the Grounds Management Association. So you can go back to them and ask them any questions if you need to, specifically about the report. So it starts with a bit of an overview of the report and a bit of kind of general guidance. You can then skip to any sections you need to get to using these regarding maintenance. As I mentioned, the equipment section will only have anything in it if they're recommending you to purchase replacement equipment. And then this page will show you some of the measurements for that pitch. What I forgot to mention is, when you're inputting the information on PitchPower, don't worry about the measurements being correct. As long as the picture's really good and you've got the measuring tape next to the blade of grass or next to the soil sample, the GMA can amend the measurement at their end. So yeah, so they may amend what you've put in if they think that you've miscalculated the measurement or not, maybe measured it quite correctly. This at the bottom here will show you how the pitch rating changes over time. So when you do your next one, you'll have a second dot, and it might be up at basic, or it might have moved up to good. It might drop back down again, so you can kind of see how it progresses over time. And also in this grid here, you'll see green if one of the measurements has improved, or red if it's regressed, or it'll stay black if it's stayed as it was as well. So it kind of gives you an idea as to the actions that you've taken since the last assessment, or what's working, what's changed. So it's got that for each pitch. And then we get into the recommendations. So the recommendations are written in priority order. So these are if you're not going to be able to do absolutely everything that's in there, be it the amount of money that you've got and the number of recommendations are in there, it's best to go with the ones that are at the top and work your way down and get as many of those in as you can, really. There's an estimated cost in there, so that's largely in there just to give you a bit of an idea, so that you're not having contractors quote you ridiculous figures for the works that you're potentially asking them to do. You've also got the frequency of how often that will need doing, and sometimes the recommendation, usually it'll be for the whole ground, but sometimes it might be for a particular pitch only. So as we go through, you've got decompaction, overseeding, weed treatment, goal mouth repairs in the season, mowing, and should be line cutting, line marking at the bottom. And then at the bottom, you've got, again, a estimated budget to carry out those recommendations. Then on the final page, you've got information about how to apply for the funding. So this is the link that you need to visit to apply for the funding. You got the report ID again there for you to use when you do the application. And you've also got a couple of other extra bits there. So the GMA do have some training courses that you can go on if you've got people who might need it. And there's also the groundskeeping community, which is really useful for liaison with other people across Kent and the rest of the country in terms of groundskeeping practices. So support pitch advisors. So in terms of that first PitchPower assessment, we can provide some support pitch advisors to come out and help you do that. As I've mentioned, we do have we do need you to do 2 PitchPower assessments per year whilst you're on the funding program. So it's important that when we do have a support pitcher advisor come out, that whoever's going to be doing the assessments moving forward is also present, so they learn how to do it. There's a link there if you need to request one. I will make sure these slides get sent round though, so don't worry too much about grabbing that link now. But you'll need to make sure that those A, B, C, D, E, F pre-assessment actions are undertaken in advance, because if we send a support pitch advisor out and you get partway through the assessment and it's asking information about drainage, but you don't know the detail and can't continue, then we won't be able to submit the inspection. And obviously they then need to come back out again, which is obviously additional cost and time. So it's key to make sure that those pre-assessment actions are completed in advance of an advisor coming out. So once PitchPower's been done, it then unlocks these 3 funding streams. So you've got the grass pitch maintenance fund, which is the one I'm going to go into more detail on. So this is tapered over 6 years, and I'll explain how that works shortly. You then got the grass pitch machinery and equipment fund, which I mentioned a little bit about before in terms of you needing that recommendation in the PitchPower report. It's up to £25,000 that you can access, but you'll need to put in 25% of the total project costs yourself. And then the final one is the grass pitch drainage fund, which is one that the Football Foundation prefer to steer clear from and use it as a bit of a last resort. They spent quite a lot of money in the early 2000s on drainage for pitches, and it didn't yield the results that they kind of hoped it would. So they prefer to see at least a couple of years of grass pitch maintenance funding going into the site, and that being in line with the recommendations in the PitchPower report before they consider any application to the drainage fund. It is up to £25,000, but again requires a 25% partnership contribution. However, the cost of drainage installation is likely to be much, much higher than that. So in terms of what your contribution would end up being, it's probably likely to be significantly more than 25%, because it will go significantly higher than the £25,000. So in terms of the grass pitch maintenance fund, as of April, educational sites are now one of the eligible lead applicants. So this means that you as an educational establishment can apply, but also clubs who are on your site can also apply. So you almost need to have a bit of a discussion with them around who you'd like to have as the lead applicant. Applicants will need security of tenure, so either ownership of the freehold, or an uninterruptible lease or license for 10 years remaining. If that's not in place, a lease or license which has more than 12 months left can be used and accompanied with the landlord and tenant form. If there's no lease or license at all, you can still get this funding, but it will need a grass pitch maintenance agreement pro forma, which we've got a template for all of those documents, which will need to be accompanied with the application. So in terms of what you're allowed to spend this money on, so it can only be used on contractor work, so for things like slitting or scarification and decompaction, purchasing any materials, so seed or fertilizer, and then any small equipment, so things like a soil sampler. Anything big or major machinery would need to go through the grass pitch machinery fund. Routine grass cutting and line marking are not eligible, so you can't spend the money on that. And also, this money should be used to add to the existing investment into the pitches, not to replace any of your current maintenance that you're doing on the pitches. So that's a link again where applications can be made. And just a reminder that you can't actually do an application without having that PitchPower assessment first, because you'll need the PitchPower ID report, PitchPower report ID code when you're submitting the application. So in terms of the money, which I'm sure is the keen bit that everyone's keen to hear about, the way that they do it is there's two different strands. So there's an enhanced grant, which is given to the worst pitches. So the ones that are poor or basic, and they'll be entitled to a grant to try and move the pitches up to a good level. So it's a higher amount of money. The pitches that are already good or advanced, you'll still be able to get funding, and that will be a sustained grant, which will help to keep the pitches at that level. Key bit to note is that the enhanced grant, there is an applicant contribution that comes in from year 3 onwards, whereas the sustained grant is a 100% funded grant. So if your pitches are already good, then you'll get this extra money and there's no requirement for you to add anything further into it. So you'll see the example that I've got there of one 11v11 pitch, which is initially rated as basic, which means that the grant will be £3,200. So this is how it tapers out across the 6 years. So you'll see in the fourth column there, the total project costs £3,200 in each of the years. In year 1 and 2, that is from the Football Foundation. That'll be a total 100% grant. From year 3, you've then got the applicant contribution that comes in, meaning you're contributing 33% to the cost of the enhanced maintenance. What's key to note here is that these figures are not actual figures. So although you're entitled to £12,800 in this example, if in year 3 your pitch has already moved up to good and you're not needing to spend as much on pitch maintenance in order to sustain it at that level, then it might be that you only spend £1,000 rather than £3,200 on enhanced maintenance, in which case the grant would be £667, or rather £677 ish, and your contribution will be £333. So the way that it'd work is in year 1 and 2, you'll get the money up front. From year 3 onwards, you'll need to provide receipts to indicate what you spent the money on, and then they'll reimburse you 67% of your spend up to a maximum of 2,133. And then you'll see in year 5 and 6 that it tapers off again. So your contribution increases and the Football Foundation's contribution decreases. From year 1 onwards, you'll need to evidence what you spent the previous year's grant on. So they just want to make sure that you're not spending it on any ineligible items or things that it shouldn't be spent on. So if you're going to apply as the educational establishment, you can either do this as an individual school, or if you're part of an academy trust, then the individual schools within it can apply, or which I think would be easier, the academy trust as a whole can apply for the funding. If that's the case and you've got multiple sites, a PitchPower assessment needs to take place on every school site, and that's on every pitch as well. So I know with the smaller pitches, if you've got 5v5 pitches, it can seem a bit frustrating doing an assessment on both pitches when they're right next to each other and the grass looks exactly the same. But unfortunately, that's just how the funding works. And you'll also need a separate funding application for each site as well. So you'll need to evidence that you've got security of tenure. So again, that might be the freehold or lease or license with 10 years left to run. I guess the latter two might be less applicable to yourselves in terms of a lease or license with 12 months left to run, or an insufficient lease or license at all. You'll also need to evidence that you've got the partnership funding. So they're not going to ask for you to have screenshots of bank accounts or anything like that. It's just a text box which will ask where the money is going to be coming from for you to be able to pay for the applicant contribution if it's applicable. And you'll also need to complete a grass pitch service level agreement to demonstrate that you've got community usage on the site. So if you've got any pitches that are not used by a community football club, that pitch won't be eligible for funding. So yeah, that document is just to demonstrate that you do have a club that is committing to using the site in the long term. If you've got a club on the site who wants to apply for the funding instead themselves, they can do this. So again, the same things will apply. They'll need a PitchPower assessment to take place on each site. A separate funding application will be required for each site as well. Again, they'll need to evidence that they've got security of tenure. So they're not obviously going to have the freehold in this situation, and in most cases, probably not a lease or a license with 10 years left to run on it. But as long as they've got a lease or a license with 12 months, accompanied with the landlord and tenant form, or if they haven't got a lease or a license at all, that they've filled in the grass pitch maintenance agreement pro forma with yourselves, then they'll be able to access the funding. And once again, they'll need to evidence where they're getting the partnership funding from if it's required from year 3 onwards. So it might be something that you want to chat with the clubs that are using your site to see who's best placed to apply for the funding. It might be a sales because you're undertaking all of the maintenance already. If it's them, if it's them who you want to do it, and they're also keen to do the application, but you're the ones that are undertaking the maintenance, you can still work with them in that basis. So they'll apply, they'll get the money, and then they'll working with yourselves, work out who the contractor's going to be. It might be someone that you're already working with, who's then going to undertake the works in there, and they'll be the one that gets invoiced for the works. When it comes to that year 3 applicant contribution, they can reference your input into the existing maintenance to be the partnership funding. Okay, so once you've been awarded the funding, first things first is we'll come out and do a celebration photo with you with our giant check, and then we'll share some of that on social media just to celebrate the efforts that you've gone to in terms of getting the PitchPower assessment done and then successfully applying for the funding. We'll also use that opportunity to discuss with you how you'll spend the funds in line with the PitchPower report, just to make sure that you're on track and you've kind of mapped out what you're doing and you're all sorted with a potential contractor to undertake the works. You'll also need to undertake 2 PitchPower assessments per year, as I mentioned. So there's a compulsory period, which is between November and March. And this is because they'd like to see what the pitches are like in the wettest part of the season. And then there's also the option to do your second assessment between April and June or September and October. So you can also do it in July and August. However, they suggest not to, because one, the ground is probably going to be a bit too hard to get a spade into the ground, and 2, it doesn't give a good indication of what the pitch is like at the time when players are using it most. So they prefer to see what it's like during the actual playing season rather than during that summer period. However, if that's the time when you're available to be able to do it, you can still submit an a PitchPower assessment in those months as well if you wish to. So when all of your pitches on the site reach a good level, you'll receive our Good Pitches wall plaque, which you can then fix to your clubhouses or similar, to basically show off the effort that you've put into making sure you're providing a really good quality environment for football. So in terms of support that we've got available, so I've mentioned previously about the support pitch advisors who can help with your first PitchPower assessment. They can't come out to do subsequent ones. So if they come out and visit, they then can't come out and visit again because we've got a finite amount of funding. So we can't have them going back repeatedly. So it's key that when they do visit, you do have someone there that's going to be able to learn how to do the assessment moving forward. We're starting a application surgery. So this will be for anyone that's struggling with doing the actual application. So you'll get some one-to-one support from me. This is going to be available every Friday for you to book into, and we'll have an online chat and work through the application together. And hopefully by the end, we'll have it ready to submit. Obviously, you will still need to have had the PitchPower assessment undertaken before that point already. Anyway. We're going to be doing a practical PitchPower workshop in September. So obviously I understand that many of you will be shutting up shop in maybe a week or so's time. So you might be looking to do your PitchPower assessment when you return in September. We are going to be doing a workshop just with some tips on how to speed up your assessment and also really get under the skin of understanding that PitchPower report. But I'll send around details of that in due course. And we've also got access to the Hive groundskeeping community, and we've got a Kent specific group for that as well. So I'll just show you quickly the community. So it's hosted by the Football Foundation. So go to footballfoundation.hivelearning.com, and you'll see this, where there's plenty of technical resources, as you can see here, information around dealing with drought as a feature on the top there, and various people within the groundskeeping community can write little messages on there, and you can respond with tips or hints that you've kind of got around how to tackle different issues. And then if you go up to groups up here, you'll then be able to join the Kent community, which is the Kent FA Grass Pitch Improvement Hub. And in there, you'll see more local information and local people. So, yeah, it's a good way of liaising with those who are doing the same kind of works as yourself across the county. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful. But yeah, have we got any questions on any of those bits?
I'm here. Hi, I've got a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah. So if you were to go ahead of it, from what I gather, you're essentially signing a 6-year contract where we'll have to make contributions from year 3 onwards. Is that more or less it?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it is actually a 10-year program. So although the funding requirement, or sorry, the grant is only for 6 years and the contribution is from year 3 onwards, you'll need to evidence obviously what you spent, and then they'll reimburse you for the additional. So they'll reimburse you 67% for year 3 and 4, 33% from year 5 and 6, and then from year 7 they won't reimburse anything, but they won't expect you to then show what you've spent either. But they will expect you to continue doing the PitchPower assessment, so they can see how the pitch is changing, and they can continue to give you that advice on what to do to keep improving it.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, that makes sense. I wanted to double check. Thank you.
Cool. And Vinny, what happens if you have 9 aside pitches and inside the 11 aside ones? So you need to go with the bigger pitch, and then any that are overmarked would need to be ignored. So another tip from me that could be worth doing if you want to try and maximize the funding that you can access, if you've got space for example, 3 11v11s, but you usually have an 11v11, a 9v9, and a 7v7, it may be worth marking out 3 11v11s and then doing the assessment so that you can get the maximum amount of funding. So yeah, it's worth doing that. But yeah, any that are overmarks, you have to go with the bigger pitch. Okay. So if there's no other questions, then I guess just the final bits just to wrap up. Next kind of steps. So obviously to get the pitches assessed, check with your clubs in case they've already done this. I'm sure you probably already know, because they'd have had to ask you questions around whether there's drainage installed at the site, etc. If you do need a support pitch advisor, then you can submit a request for that, and I'll make sure that you've got the link for that as well. Once you've got that PitchPower report through, start the application for the funding. It's a really quick and easy process. It's about 10-minute application form, so it's not arduous at all. However, if you do need a bit of help when you're going through it, then you can book into our weekly application surgery, and we can work through it together. And then just undertake the works that are in the report. You may speak with contractors who might suggest alternative things to do, but it's best to stick to what's written in the report, because a contractor may prefer you to start doing some additional works because it means that they'll get more business out of you, whereas the advice that's in the PitchPower report is not of any benefit to anyone else other than yourselves. So it's worth using the advice that's in there. And fingers crossed, in kind of 12 to 18 months, when the pitches have improved, yeah, you can enjoy a better playing environment for everyone that's involved in football at your site as well. So I've dropped my email at the bottom there. So if you've got any questions following the webinar today, or wanted to ask anything specifically about your site, then yeah, let me know and I'll be happy to happy to help where I can. So hopefully that was helpful for you all, and yeah, I look forward to hopefully being able to come out to some of you and see your sites and help you improve those pitches. But brilliant. Unless there's any other questions, I'll close the webinar. No problem, John. No worries, Jack. No worries, Vinny and John. Take care, everyone.